Here's an expanded version of key point 1. When God is first in your life, something remarkable happens. Everything else begins to fall into place. It doesn't mean life becomes perfect or that challenges disappear, but it means there is a firm foundation beneath everything you build. You know, there's a reason why Scripture emphasizes seeking God first. It's not just a suggestion, it's a principle for how life is designed to work. When God is the foundation, it brings stability, clarity, and purpose. It's like building a house. If the foundation is weak or unstable, no matter how beautiful the structure looks, it will eventually collapse. But when the foundation is solid, it can stand the test of time and weather any storm. That's what God offers when we place Him first in our lives. A foundation that is unshakable. The problem is, so often we try to build our lives on other things. We build on success, relationships, money, or even our own abilities. And while those things might look solid at first, they're temporary. They shift, they crumble. And when life gets tough, they can't hold us up. But God can. His word, His character, and His promises are constant. They don't change with the seasons of life or the opinions of others. The beauty of making God your foundation is that it gives you a sense of direction that nothing else can provide. You begin to see your life through the lens of His plan rather than your own limited perspective. And let's face it, our plans, as much as we like to think we've got it all figured out, are never as good as His. He sees the bigger picture. He knows where every piece fits, even when we don't understand it in the moment. And when you trust Him as the foundation, you don't have to rely on your own strength to hold everything together. There's a peace that comes with that kind of trust, isn't there? When you know that the foundation of your life is secure, you're not shaken by every challenge or disappointment that comes your way. You're not constantly scrambling to figure out what to do next, because you know God is already ahead of you, making a way. And it's not just about avoiding collapse. It's about building something that lasts. When God is first, the things you build, your career, your family, your dreams, they're not just temporary successes. They have eternal significance because they're rooted in Him. But let's talk about what it really means to put God first. It's more than just going to church on Sunday or praying when you're in trouble. It's about making Him the center of every decision, every goal, every moment. It's saying, God, You're not just a part of my life, You are my life. That's a big shift, isn't it? Because we're so used to compartmentalizing. We give God certain parts of our lives while keeping others separate, thinking we can handle those on our own. But that's not how it works. If God isn't the foundation, then everything else is on shaky ground. And I'll tell you something, when you truly put God first, it changes how you see everything else. Your priorities shift. The things that used to seem so important, so urgent, start to fade in comparison to what really matters. You start to realize that success isn't about how much you achieve, but about how obedient you are to His calling. Relationships aren't just about what you can get from others, but about how you can reflect His love. Even the challenges you face take on a new perspective because you see them as opportunities for God to show His faithfulness. Now, that doesn't mean it's always easy. There will be moments when putting God first feels counterintuitive, even risky. There will be times when the world tells you to go one way, but God is calling you to go another. And in those moments, you have to choose. Do you trust the foundation, or do you trust what looks easier or more appealing? But here's the thing, every time you choose God, every time you put Him first, you're reinforcing that foundation. You're building a life that can stand strong no matter what comes your way. And the best part? When God is first, you're not just building your own life. You're making an impact on the lives around you. People notice when your life is built on something different, something solid. They see the peace, the confidence, the purpose that comes from living with God at the center, and it points them to Him. So, if you're wondering why your life doesn't feel like it's thriving, maybe it's time to check the foundation. Maybe it's time to ask yourself, is God really first? Because when He is, everything else falls into place. It might not always look the way you expect, but it will always be exactly what you need. And that's the kind of life that thrives, not just for a moment, but for eternity. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. When God is first in your life, something transformative happens. There's a sense of order that begins to emerge out of what might have felt like chaos. Life with all its demands and distractions can easily feel overwhelming. We often find ourselves pulled in 100 directions, trying to juggle responsibilities, ambitions, and relationships, while still trying to make sense of who we are and where we're going. But when God takes his rightful place at the center of it all, something shifts. It's as though all the noise and clutter that once felt impossible to navigate starts to fall into place. There's a principle at work here. When God is your priority, he aligns your other priorities. He brings clarity where there was confusion and peace where there was tension. Think about it. How many times have we tried to do everything on our own, thinking we could handle it all if we just worked harder or planned better? And yet, no matter how much effort we put in, things still feel off balance. It's exhausting, isn't it? That's because we're not designed to carry the weight of life on our own. We're not meant to be the ones holding it all together. That's God's role. When he's first, everything else begins to take its proper place. It's not that the challenges disappear or that life suddenly becomes easy. It's that you start to see it differently. You start to operate with a sense of purpose and direction, rather than constantly reacting to whatever feels most urgent in the moment. God has a way of showing you what truly matters and helping you let go of the things that don't. And when you live with that kind of clarity, it frees you from the constant pressure to do it all. But let's be honest, keeping God first isn't always easy. Life has a way of pulling our attention in other directions. There's always something vying for that top spot in our lives. Work, family, finances, even our own ambitions. These things aren't bad in themselves, but when they take priority over God, they create disorder. They leave us chasing after things that can never fully satisfy, wondering why we still feel restless or unfulfilled. It's only when God is first that everything else can find its proper place. You see, God isn't just another item on your to-do list. He's not something you can check off once you've spent a few minutes in prayer or gone to church on Sunday. He's the source of your strength, the foundation of your peace, and the one who gives meaning to everything else in your life. When you prioritize him, it's not about adding something extra to your already busy schedule. It's about making him the center of it all. It's about letting him guide every decision, every relationship, every moment. And here's the beauty of it. When God is first, you're no longer operating out of your own limited capacity. You're drawing from his infinite strength and wisdom. You're no longer trying to figure everything out on your own, because you trust that he already has it figured out. That kind of trust brings freedom. It allows you to release the need to control everything and instead focus on what truly matters. When God brings order to your life, it's not just about the external things. It's about what happens inside of you. Your heart begins to change. Your priorities shift. The things that used to stress you out or consume your thoughts start to lose their hold on you. You begin to see that so much of what you once thought was important pales in comparison to the peace and purpose that come from walking in alignment with God. And that peace isn't just for you, it impacts everyone around you. When your life is in order because God is first, it creates a ripple effect. Your relationships improve because you're no longer operating from a place of anxiety or self-centeredness. You're able to love and serve others more fully because your identity and worth are rooted in him, not in what you achieve or how others perceive you. The truth is, we all crave order. We all want to feel like our lives have meaning and direction. But true order doesn't come from trying to manage everything on our own. It comes from surrendering to the one who created us and trusting that he knows what's best. When we put him first, he aligns everything else. Not just our schedules or our goals, but our hearts, our minds, and our souls. So if you've been feeling overwhelmed, if your life feels chaotic or out of balance, maybe it's time to ask yourself, is God truly first? Because when he is, everything else begins to fall into place. It's not always easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but the peace and order that come from prioritizing him are worth it. And when you live with that kind of divine order, you begin to thrive, not just in what you do, but in who you are. And that's where true fulfillment lies. When God is first in your life, something incredible happens. You begin to discover the purpose you were created for. We all have moments when we wonder why we're here, or what our lives are meant to accomplish. That deep sense of longing for meaning, for direction, for clarity. It's not a coincidence. It's a reflection of how we were designed. We weren't created to wander aimlessly or to simply exist. We were created with a purpose. And that purpose can only truly be understood when we align ourselves with the one who gave it to us. The problem is, so many of us try to find that purpose in other things. We look to our careers, our relationships, our accomplishments, or even our passions, hoping that they will give us the sense of fulfillment we're searching for. And while those things can be important, they're not the ultimate source of our purpose. They're not the answer to the bigger questions that stir in our hearts. Because here's the truth. Purpose doesn't come from what you do. It comes from who you are, and more importantly, whose you are. And when you place God first, He begins to reveal that to you in ways that are undeniable. When God is at the center, your perspective starts to change. You stop seeing your life as a series of random events or disconnected moments, and you start to see it as part of a bigger story, His story. Every gift, every challenge, every opportunity suddenly takes on new meaning, because you realize that they're not just about you, they're part of something greater, something eternal. And when you see your life through that lens, it changes how you approach everything. The things that once felt meaningless or mundane are transformed because you understand that they're pieces of a much bigger puzzle. But discovering your purpose isn't just about understanding what you're meant to do, it's about understanding who you're meant to be. And that starts with your relationship with God. When you make Him your priority, He begins to shape your character, your values, and your desires. He aligns your heart with His, and in doing so, He prepares you for the purpose He's called you to fulfill. That's why it's so important to seek Him first. Because when you're aligned with Him, you're not just chasing your own dreams, you're stepping into the destiny He's created specifically for you. And here's the amazing thing. God's purpose for your life isn't something you have to strive to achieve on your own. It's not about proving yourself or reaching a certain level of success. It's about surrendering to Him and allowing Him to work through you. It's about trusting that He's already equipped you with everything you need to fulfill His plan. Sometimes we get so caught up in comparing ourselves to others or trying to measure up to certain standards that we forget this simple truth. God doesn't call you to be someone else. He calls you to be who He created you to be. When you embrace that, it brings a freedom that's hard to put into words. You stop striving for things that were never meant to define you, and you start walking in the confidence that comes from knowing you're living out God's plan. And that confidence doesn't come from your abilities or achievements. It comes from knowing that the God who created the universe has a specific, intentional purpose for your life. It's humbling, isn't it, to think that the Creator of all things not only knows you, but has a plan for you? That's the kind of realization that changes everything. Of course, discovering your purpose doesn't always happen overnight. It's a journey, and like any journey, it requires faith, patience, and perseverance. There will be moments when you're unsure, when the path ahead feels unclear, or when you're tempted to give up. But those are the moments when you have to lean into God even more. Because He's not just the one who gives you purpose. He's the one who guides you every step of the way. He's the one who opens doors you never expected and closes the ones that aren't meant for you. He's the one who uses every experience, even the painful ones, to prepare you for what's ahead. And as you walk in that purpose, you'll start to see the impact it has, not just on your own life, but on the lives of those around you. Because when you're living out God's plan, it's never just about you. It's about reflecting His love, His grace, and His truth in everything you do. It's about being a light in a world that desperately needs hope. And that's where true fulfillment comes from. Not from what you achieve, but from knowing that you're making a difference for His kingdom. So if you're still searching for your purpose, the answer is simple. Put God first. Seek Him with all your heart and trust that He will reveal it to you in His perfect timing. Because when God is first, your life begins to thrive, not just in what you do, but in who you are. And that's a life worth living. When God is first in your life, something profound takes place. You begin to experience a sense of peace and joy that doesn't come from your circumstance. It's a peace that surpasses understanding, a joy that remains steadfast even when life gets difficult. Too often, we look for peace and joy in things that are temporary. We think, if I could just get that promotion, or if I could just have that relationship, or if I could just solve this one problem, then I'll feel better. But the problem is, even when we achieve those things, the satisfaction they bring is fleeting. The peace doesn't last, and the joy feels shallow because it's based on external factors that can change in an instant. When God is first, however, your peace and joy are rooted in something eternal, something unchanging. That's the difference. You see, the world offers a kind of peace that's dependent on everything going right. It says, you'll feel at ease when you have enough money, when everyone likes you, when your life looks picture perfect. But that kind of peace is fragile. The moment something goes wrong, and let's be honest, life is full of unexpected challenges, that peace disappears. The joy the world offers works the same way. It's tied to external things. So when those things are taken away, the joy fades. God's peace and joy are different. They're not dependent on what's happening around you. They come from knowing who He is and trusting in His promises. When God is first in your life, you're able to face challenges with a sense of calm because you know He's in control. You're able to endure difficulties without losing hope because you know He's working all things for your good. That doesn't mean you won't have moments of fear or frustration. You're human, after all. But it means those feelings won't have the final say. God's peace has a way of quieting the storm within you, even when the storm around you is raging. And then there's the joy. The joy that comes from God isn't about pretending everything is perfect or forcing yourself to be happy no matter what. It's about knowing deep in your soul that you are loved, that you have a purpose, and that nothing can separate you from Him. It's about finding delight in the everyday blessings He provides and trusting that even in the hard moments, He's with you. This kind of joy isn't fleeting. It carries you through the ups and downs of life because it's not tied to your circumstances, it's tied to your relationship with Him. You might be wondering how to access that kind of peace and joy, especially if you're in the middle of a difficult season. The answer is simple, but it requires intention. Put God first. When you start your day with Him, when you make time to be in His presence, when you surrender your worries to Him, you open the door for His peace and joy to fill your heart. It's not about ignoring your problems or pretending they don't exist. It's about bringing them to God and trusting Him to handle them. It's about saying, Lord, I don't have all the answers, but I know You do. I'm putting this in Your hands. And let me tell you, when you do that, something amazing happens. The things that used to stress you out or rob you of joy lose their power over you. You stop being so consumed by the what-ifs and the ifless, and you start to focus on what really matters. You begin to see that even in the hardest moments, there are reasons to be grateful. You start to experience the kind of peace and joy that can only come from knowing that God is with you, that He loves you, and that He's working on your behalf. This isn't just about how you feel, it's about how you live. When you're grounded in God's peace and joy, it changes how you respond to the challenges and opportunities that come your way. You're not easily shaken by setbacks because you know your foundation is secure. You're not constantly chasing after things that can never truly satisfy because you've already found what your soul is longing for. And that kind of life is contagious. When people see the peace and joy in you, they're drawn to it. They want to know where it comes from. And that gives you an opportunity to point them to the source, God Himself. Life will always have its share of struggles. But when God is first, those struggles don't define you. His peace and joy become your anchor, your strength, your constant. So if you're searching for something to steady you, something to sustain you, the answer is clear. Make God your priority, because when He's first, you'll find a peace and joy that nothing else can provide. And that's the kind of life that thrives. When God is first in your life, one of the most powerful things that begins to happen is a shift in your relationships. Relationships are at the core of who we are as human beings. We're wired for connection, whether it's with family, friends, or our broader community. But the truth is, relationships can also be one of the greatest sources of struggle and pain. Misunderstandings, unmet expectations, and competing priorities can create division. When God isn't at the center of our lives, it's easy for these challenges to overwhelm us and for our relationships to become strained or even broken. But when you put God first, He begins to transform how you relate to others. Suddenly, your perspective shifts. You start to approach relationships not out of selfishness or need, but out of a place of love, grace, and humility. That's what happens when God is your priority. He begins to shape your heart to reflect His, and His heart is one of pure, selfless love. When God is first, He teaches you how to forgive in a way that you may never have thought possible. Let's be honest, holding on to grudges can feel easier sometimes. The hurt and disappointment can be so deep that forgiving someone feels like letting them off the hook. But what we forget is that holding on to bitterness doesn't free us, it binds us. It keeps us chained to the pain of the past. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is the key that unlocks those chains. And it's not something we can do fully in our own strength. It's something God enables us to do when we let Him work in our hearts. He shows us the power of grace, and He reminds us of the grace we've been given so we can extend it to others. Forgiveness isn't just about the big, obvious hurts either. It's about the little things that can build up over time, the small misunderstandings, the unspoken frustrations, the words that cut deeper than they should have. When God is first, He softens your heart so that instead of holding on to those moments, you can release them. He helps you to see people through His eyes, not just as flawed individuals, but as His beloved creations, worthy of patience and compassion. But it's not just about forgiveness. When God is first, He also gives you the ability to love more deeply and authentically. Real love, the kind that sustains relationships, isn't always easy. It requires sacrifice, understanding, and effort. It's about putting someone else's needs above your own, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. And that kind of love doesn't come naturally to us. It comes from God. When He's at the center of your life, His love flows through you and into the people around you. It's a love that isn't based on what you get in return, but on the simple fact that He calls us to love as He loves us. Think about how transformative that is, not just for you, but for the people in your life. When you love with God's love, it creates a ripple effect. It draws others closer to you and ultimately closer to Him. It strengthens relationships in ways that nothing else can because it's rooted in something eternal. And when those relationships are rooted in God's love, they become a source of joy and strength, even in difficult seasons. God's presence in your relationships also helps you to be a better listener, a better encourager, and a better friend. How often do we rush through conversations, focusing more on what we want to say next than on truly hearing the other person? When God is first, He teaches you to slow down, to be present, and to genuinely care about what others are going through. He gives you the wisdom to know when to speak and when to simply listen. He equips you to be a source of encouragement, to speak life into others, and to remind them of their worth in His eyes. And let's not forget about the relationships that challenge us the most, the ones that test our patience and push us to our limits. When God is first, He gives you the strength to love even in those moments. He helps you to set healthy boundaries while still showing kindness. He reminds you that loving someone doesn't always mean agreeing with them, but it does mean treating them with respect and dignity. The transformation that happens in your relationships when God is first doesn't just impact the here and now, it has eternal significance. These connections, built on love, grace, and understanding, are a reflection of God's kingdom. They're an opportunity to show His love to the world in a tangible way. And as you allow Him to work in and through your relationships, you become a living testament to His power and goodness. So, if you're longing for deeper, more meaningful relationships, ones that aren't defined by conflict, insecurity, or unmet expectations, put God first. Let Him lead the way. Because when He's at the center, He brings healing where there's been hurt, unity where there's been division, and love that overflows in ways you never thought possible. That's the kind of transformation only He can bring. When God is first in your life, it brings clarity and purpose to everything you do. So many people are wandering through life feeling lost, uncertain, and unsure of why they're here or what they're supposed to be doing. They chase after goals, achievements, and milestones that they think will bring fulfillment, only to find that the finish line keeps moving. What seemed so important yesterday suddenly feels hollow today, and the cycle repeats. This sense of purposelessness is one of the greatest struggles of our time. But when God is at the center of your life, something changes. You begin to see your existence not as a random series of events, but as a divine calling. a journey that He has carefully and lovingly designed for you. God doesn't create anyone without a purpose. Each of us is uniquely crafted, gifted, and placed in this world to fulfill a role that no one else can. But understanding that purpose begins with surrender. It begins with acknowledging that God's plan for your life is greater than anything you could ever imagine for yourself. When you put Him first, you open the door for Him to guide you, to reveal His will, and to equip you with everything you need to fulfill it. And let me tell you, living in alignment with God's purpose is one of the most freeing and fulfilling experiences you will ever have. One of the first things that happens when you put God first is that your priorities begin to shift. You stop chasing after things that don't matter in the long run. The world tells us to focus on things like wealth, status, and power. It tells us that our value is tied to what we accomplish or how others perceive us. But God's perspective is so much different. He cares more about who you are than what you do. He's more interested in the condition of your heart than the size of your bank account or the number of followers you have. When God is first, you begin to see that your worth isn't based on external achievements, but on His love for you. And that shift in perspective changes everything. When you understand that your purpose comes from God, you also begin to see your daily life in a new light. The ordinary tasks and responsibilities that once felt mundane or unimportant take on greater meaning because you're doing them for His glory. Whether it's your work, your relationships, or even the way you spend your free time, everything becomes an opportunity to honor Him. This doesn't mean you have to be perfect or have it all figured out. It simply means that your focus has shifted. You're no longer living for yourself, you're living for Him. Another powerful aspect of putting God first is that it allows you to discover and embrace the gifts and talents He's given you. Each of us has been uniquely equipped with abilities, passions, and experiences that are meant to be used for a greater purpose. But sometimes we downplay those gifts or compare them to others, thinking they're not enough. When God is first, He reminds you that what He's placed in you is intentional and valuable. He shows you how to use your gifts in ways that not only bless others, but also bring you joy and fulfillment. And let's talk about the guidance that comes from putting God first. Life is full of decisions, big and small, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed or unsure about which path to take. But when you're seeking God's will and putting Him at the center, He promises to direct your steps. That doesn't mean you'll always have a clear roadmap or that you won't face uncertainty. But it does mean you can trust that He's leading you. His plans are good, and even when you don't understand them in the moment, you can have confidence that He's working everything out for your benefit and His glory. Living with God first also gives you resilience. Purpose doesn't mean life will always be easy. There will still be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But when you know your purpose is rooted in something eternal, those difficulties don't derail you. You can persevere because you know that every moment, good or bad, is part of the bigger picture. God is using everything, even the hard times, to shape you, grow you, and prepare you for what's ahead. And perhaps one of the most beautiful things about living with God first is the impact it has on others. When you're walking in your purpose, people notice. They see the peace, confidence, and fulfillment that come from living a life centered on God. Your life becomes a testimony to His goodness and a source of inspiration for those around you. You don't have to preach a sermon or have all the answers. Your actions, your attitude, and your faith speak volumes. So, if you're searching for clarity, direction, or meaning in your life, the answer is simple. Start with God. Put Him first in everything you do. Let Him guide you, shape you, and use you for His purpose. Because when God is first, you discover a life that's not only full, but overflowing with meaning, joy, and impact. That's the kind of life you were created to live.